Scorecard structure and data values can be built up manually or loaded via data imports in Spider Impact. I'll start with a manual build by leveraging the manual org example structure that I've already selected. The first step is to build a scorecard by selecting Create Scorecard. I'll provide a name of scorecard and select Create. An important note is that only one scorecard is allowed per organization, and this becomes a critical thing to understand when importing. With that said, I immediately get taken to the next part of the hierarchy, which is perspective. I'll type financial and select Create. The default is to create another perspective, but if I want to build the next level down, which is objective, I'll select financial, select new scorecard item, type increase revenue, and select Create. Once again, the default is to create another similar item, but if I want to build the next level down, which is measure, I'll select increase revenue, and then select new scorecard item. I'll type training revenue. And before I select create, I'll note that there are a number of fields I can set at the measure level, like scoring type and calendar. All these fields will play a key role in the automated import that I'll review shortly. With that said, I'll select create in the bottom right. To finish off this very simple structure, I'll select done. Now, that only took a minute to build, but if I had a massive structure to develop, building it all manually might take a really long time. And that's where I would recommend stopping and exploring a more efficient alternative, like importing. I can do that by selecting any part of the hierarchy. And then I'll select the Send To icon in the top right. I'll then select Scorecard Import File and dump the structure into a CSV file. I'll open the file. I'll expand the zoom a bit. Expand all columns. And I'll notice that there are a number of columns included in the file, a good percentage of which are only applicable at the measure level. Each item in the hierarchy resides on its own row. This is very important to understand, as certain columns, like description, can only correspond to one item, such as a description for the increase revenue objective. I also noticed that at the measure level, for training revenue, 5 columns have been populated, even though I only took the time to load the name during the manual build. This is because certain fields like scoring type get automatically assigned, unless one is specifically chosen. The first change I'll make is with the organization column. I'll change the values from manual to automated. And that's going to be the new org that I'm importing into. If I want to quickly add another measure to the increased revenue objective, I'll just copy and paste the last row here. If I want to change the name of the measure, I can. I'll just call this book revenue. And I'll leave all the other columns as is. Now, if I wanted to create a new perspective, I could copy and paste from that row down. And I'll change the perspective to customer. I'll change the objective to improve customer satisfaction. And I'll change the first measure to customer satisfaction survey. Since this is a measure column that's a percentage, I'll change the data type to percentage. To avoid summing percentages, I'll change the aggregation type to average. An important note is that the spelling is critical. If I have a typo, the settings will fail. Moving on, if I expect the goal and red flag to be the same for every period out into the future, I can scroll to the first threshold column towards the right. I'll enter the lowest value, which is going to be the red flag, in the first threshold column, and I'll put a value of 90 in that. And then the next column, I'm going to enter a value of 95 for the goal. Note also that there are 7 threshold columns at the end, which is only applicable with one of the 11 scoring types, 3 color stabilize. And to illustrate that, I'll change the name and the scoring type to 3 color stabilize. So I'll change the measure, and this could have been called whatever. And I'm going to change, most importantly, the scoring type to that same value, 3 color stabilize, and make sure that I spell that correctly there. I'll also place values of 1 to 7 in each of the threshold columns. Assuming I'm done with the scorecard structure buildup, I'll save all of my changes. The question now is, how do I import that back into the system? And I'll go back to Spider Impact, and I'm going to switch over to the automated org example. Click on that and choose Select. I'll first note that a scorecard has not yet been defined, and since none have been defined, I have an option to import scorecard items. I'll go ahead and select that. I'll select Browse at the bottom, select the scorecard.csv file we were just working with, and select Open. At the scorecard item import dialog, I can adjust the column mappings. I can remove a mapping by clicking the right edge of a column like perspective, and select X. To add a mapping, I would select a column like perspective, and drag and drop it to where I want it to go. I'll just essentially put it right back where it was. Another option is the ability to ignore rows. For instance, I could ignore the training revenue measure by clicking ignore in that particular row there. This would then import all rows from the file I was working with, except training revenue. And I see that that row is now grayed out. I'll keep that change and I'll click Run Import in the bottom right. I'll confirm that the import was successful and select Done. I already see that a scorecard structure has been created, and I'll just touch on the new items that I created in Excel. Under Financial, I have a new measure named Book Revenue. I also have a second perspective named Customer, and beneath that I have an objective with 2 measures. I'll select Customer Satisfaction Survey and select Edit. I'll confirm that my changes to percentage and average have come across, along with the defaulting thresholds of 90 and 95. So that looks good. I'll select the next measure, and I'll see that the scoring type has been changed to 3 color stabilized, and at the bottom I'll notice that I have 1 to 7 values for each of the 7 thresholds. So that looks good, and I'll select Done. Next, I'll show that a scorecard structure can be imported when one already exists. Spider Impact will add new items, but will not modify existing ones. With that said, this should still be used with caution. To demonstrate this, I'll import the training revenue measure that I just ignored. First, I'll go back to Excel and remove everything except the header row and the training revenue row. And I'll then save over the file. I'll go back to Spider Impact and ensure that I select the parent of the item that I want to import. In this case, what I'm going to do is minimize customer and select the parent, which is the increased revenue objective. That's selected. I'm now ready to import the measure that I ignored. In the top right, I'll select the import icon. I'll select scorecard items and then select browse. I'll select the scorecard.csv file once again and click open. I'll confirm that just the one row for training revenue is being imported. That looks good. I'll select run import. I'll confirm the one row was imported successfully and select done. I'll now confirm that the measure was imported to the right place. I'm going to expand financial and increase revenue. And I see that the measure has been added at the bottom. That could be fine. If I do want to reorder that, I would need to go to edit and I could move that above book revenue if I wanted to. With that, I'll select done. Next, I'll move on to updating measure values. Measure values can be updated manually or via a few different types of imports. I'll start by clicking on training revenue, and I'll show the first option, which is to update it manually. I'll select update, and for the month of August 2020, I'll enter a value of 225,000 for the actual, a red flag of 200,000, and a goal of 220. And then I'll choose save. As we saw with the scorecard structure, loading that manually for just one measure in this case was painless. But what if I had a full year of updates? That might be a great time to stop and explore more efficient alternatives like importing. In the top right, once again, I'll select the Send To icon. But instead of scorecard import file, I'll select measure value import. I'll confirm that I want to export the automated org structure, and I'll click next. If I wanted a load file for January through August, I would change the dates to 1/1/2020, and I'll take that through 8/1. Next, if I have both actual and threshold values to load, I need to switch from the default of dates in the header row to dates in a column and choose next. On this last step, I can preview the file. I can see that the August training revenue has already been loaded, along with the thresholds for the two measures at the bottom. If I'm okay with how this looks, I'll select Download Import File. To start, I'll increase the zoom and then expand all columns. Notice that the measure import file contains much less columns than the structure file. Due to my wizard selections, I have one row for each measure for each of the first 8 months of the year. The name of the organization, measure, and its unique ID have also been included. I'll focus on training revenue for this upload, and for the sake of time, I'll simply copy the August values for the actuals and thresholds, and I'm going to drop that into January through July. Note that if the threshold values were always the same for every period, it would have been smarter for me to define them at the measure definition level, and they would have come across automatically, as we see here for customer satisfaction survey and 3-color stabilize at the bottom. Assuming I'm done with the measure value buildup, I'll click Save. The question now is, how do I import this file into the system? And I'll go back to Spider Impact. I'll select the import icon once again. This time I'll select measure values. I see that I have two options, simple and advanced. I'll keep the default of simple import and select next. I'll select browse, select the file that I just updated, and select open. I'll select run import, select done, and I'll refresh my screen here. I see in the chart for training revenue that values have been populated for January through August. If I toggle back and forward, I can see the actual and threshold values for that individual time period, which is all coming from the Excel file. I'll now move on to the second way to import measure values, which is dates in the header row, option that appeared as a default earlier. It is intended as the most efficient load of measures that only require actual value updates. To illustrate this, I'll select Customer Satisfaction Survey. And it's a perfect candidate for dates in the header row option since it contains defaulting threshold values for each period here. Once again, I'll select the Send To icon, select Measure Value Import File, confirm the automated org and select Next. Once again, I'll change the dates to 1/1/2020 and take that through 8/1. This time, since I just have actual values to load, I'll accept the defaults of dates in the header row and select Next. At the last step, I'll select Download Import File. Once again, I'll increase the zoom and expand all columns here. Also note that existing actuals have come across. Instead of having a row for each period for each measure, I now have just one row with the dates coming across in columns. It's a much easier file to work with. I'll now load the Customer Satisfaction Survey actuals year to date. And for the sake of time, again, I'll just make that a nice simple 95 for January through August. I'll leave the other two measures blank and I'll click Save. Once again, I'll go back to Spider Impact. I'll select Import and Measure Values. This time I'll show the more powerful Advanced option, which turns the value import into a powerful 9-step wizard. I'll select Advanced Import and then select Next. I'll accept Spreadsheet as the data source and select Next. I'll select Browse, select the latest import file I was working with, and select Open. On the fourth step, I have the ability to change the header row or ignore rows for this import, but I'll just select Next. Under Transformations, I could transform the data in a number of ways, but I'll just select Next. In the sixth step, I'll confirm that I'm importing values for 4 measures, most notably Customer Satisfaction Survey. That looks good. I'll select Next. On the Destination Measure step, I'll select Scorecard on the right, and I'll select Add. I see that 4 measures were added. Now, if that was an error, I can click on Edit 4 Measures, and I could delete the desired measures here. In this case, I'll just select Close and select Next. Under mapping, I'll confirm that the four measures are being mapped correctly, and I'll select next. The last step here is extremely important. If I were to just select Run Import, the work that I just did would be a one-time process. However, if I select Save Import, I could give the import a name. Let's call it Advanced. I could adjust the task owner. I'll leave that as is. And I could also schedule the import for a certain timing. And I'll leave that alone as well. For now, I'll just select Save and Run. I'll confirm that it was successful and select Done. And refresh my screen. I'll confirm Customer Satisfaction Survey now has the actual entries of 95 for January through August. If I select Trading Revenue, I still have 225,000 values from the dates in rows upload from earlier. If I had changed those values in this latest upload within Excel, they would have been updated accordingly. Next, I'll show that there is a third way to import measure values via the home page. But before I do that, I'll select Book Revenue, and I'll determine its ID by selecting the I icon or info, and I see that the ID is 6322. I'll either make note of that mentally or write it down. I'll then select Close, and in the top left I'll select Home. Next, I'll select Measure Updates, and at the top I'll then select the Import Measure Values icon. This time I'll stick with the simple import and select Next. I'll select Dates in a column and download the example file to give an illustration of that, and select Open, or open the Excel file here. Once again, I'll increase the zoom and reposition this a bit. I'll then delete the last few rows here, rows 3 through 6. And then I'll edit the second row to load an entry for book revenue. I'll change the ID to what I had gathered earlier from the Info tab, and that was 6322. I'll change the actual value to 75,000. I'll change the value date to 8/1/20. I'll leave notes blank, and I'll enter 50,000 for the red flag and 70,000 for the goal. If I wanted to enter another period, I could copy and paste this row here and maybe change the value to 70,000, change the date to July 1st. And with that, I'll click Save, and I'll return to Spider Impact. I'll select Browse, select the metric value example file that I was just working with, and then I'll run the import. I'll confirm 2 rows were just imported and click Done. If I then go back to Scorecards, expand Financial, expand the objective, select Book Revenue, I now see the actuals and thresholds for July and August. And that looks good. So now I'm going to leave the Scorecards world by selecting Initiatives and demonstrate the handling of initiative status updates. To illustrate updating a status manually, I'll choose the manual task example here. To update an item manually, I'll select Add Status Update. I'll apply a update date of 4/15, a percent complete of 50, and a money spent to date of 2,500, and I'll then select add. So that was fairly painless, but if I had a lot of items to update, I would once again recommend using an import. The first step is to determine the ID. I'll switch to the automated task example, and I'll select the I tab in the top right again. And this time I'll see that the ID is 18023, and I'll select close. I now need to build an import file, and I'll select import up at the top right. I'll stick with simple import and select next. I'll download the example file and open that. I'll increase the zoom, move it over, and expand all columns here. I'll delete the last 3 rows, and I'll make note that this file contains an ID column, status date, percent complete, spent, and notes. What I'll do is I'll change the ID to 18023, which I gathered from the info icon. I'll change the date to 4/15/20, 50 for the percent complete, and 2,500 for the spent. Once I'm happy with this, I'll click Save. I'll go back to Spider Impact. I'll select Browse, select the initiative file I just created, and click Open. I'll select Run Import, confirm it went through successfully, and click Done. I'll refresh my screen, and I'll see that a status update has been successfully created here. Next, I'll demonstrate that data can also be imported from a database. I'll start by showing where import connections are defined in Spider Impact. I'll select Administration at the bottom, and then select Import Connections. To define a connection to a database on the top right, I'll select Add Connection within the Database Connections section. At the top, I would need to select whether the database I'm connecting to is MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, or DB2. And I'll just leave that as MySQL. I would need to provide the database host, port, database name, user, and password. And once those parameters are entered, I would select Next, and then have the ability to name the connection and select the connection owner. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to select Cancel. I'll also note that for previously defined connections, in the top right, I can either edit or delete that connection. I'll also note that I can define connections for SFTP or Google Sheets, but for now I'll just focus on the database example. Once a connection has been defined, I can then build up a measure value import by selecting the Imports option. Under Measure Values, I'll select New Import. I'll select Advanced, and then Next. I'll switch the data source to database and select Next. I'll confirm the database connection and then enter the appropriate SQL to bring back data from my particular database. In this case, I'll type select star from social sentiment. I would then select Next. I'll select Next at the transformation step. I'll drag Measure ID to the first column here. Make sure all the other columns are matched, which they are. And then I'll select Next. On the left-hand side, I'll select the MySQL org. And on the right-hand side, I'm going to click on Improve Brand Awareness. And I'm going to bring in all 4 of those measures by selecting Add. I'll then select Next. I'll ensure that the measures are mapped properly, which they are, and I'll click Next. I could save off this import, but at this time I'll just select Run Import. I'll confirm it was successful and click Done. If I then go to Scorecards and select the MySQL org, I will double check and make sure that each 4 of those measures have data through June of 2020, which they do.